It is 7 p.m. I'd like to call the meeting of the Old Saybrook Police Commission to order. Please rise and join the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands. Thank you. Tom, I'd like to turn the meeting over to you for a moment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everyone. It is with great sadness that I had to request through the chairman this next line item. Obviously, there's been a lot in the news. There's been significant, respectful, and proper public memorials for these two fallen heroes. And I can tell you that while not about us, this has affected all of us. And I thought it would be proper for this commission to acknowledge the loss of the lieutenant and the sergeant in the line of duty, Lieutenant Dustin DeMonte and Sergeant Alex Hamsey of the Bristol Police Department. So I would just simply request a solemn moment of silence and respect for the fallen. Thank you. And before I turn it back over to you, Mr. Chairman, obviously I want to commend Officer Alex Laredo for his heroic actions that evening that undoubtedly saved the lives of countless other responding law enforcement officers. And I want to commend Chief Gould on his leadership through a very, very dark time, not only for his agency, but the entire law enforcement community. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any public comments in the audience? Mr. Keating. Sure.
Okay, if I turn this around.
Sure. Not a bit.
Chairman Wilcox, members of the Old Saybrook Police Commission, thank you for the opportunity to speak before you this evening. The day after we learned two members of the Bristol, Connecticut Police Department, Lieutenant Dustin DeMonte and Sergeant Alex Hamsey, had lost their lives, and Officer Alec Ayarado had been seriously wounded, all in the line of duty, we sent a short email to Chief Spiro. I want to read that email this evening so it becomes part of the Police Commission's public record. Each day, you and the members of the Old Saybrook Police Department put your lives on the line to keep our community safe and secure. It's important, especially during these times, to recognize the commitment and dedication you have for the people and the town of Old Saybrook. Thank you for all you do every day. Sincerely, Frank and Beverly Keating. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else in the audience? Do we have a virtual audience?
Maybe we do.
Are there any hands raised?
There are no hands raised. No.
Okay. Thank you. Let's move on to item 4, discussion and possible action on the meeting minutes for the September 19 special meeting.
Yes, I move to approve the minutes of that meeting.
Is there a second?
I will second that motion.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
I abstain because I was not present.
Thank you, Jen. Good work. Thank you.
Item 5 on the agenda, executive reports. That's back to you, Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The budget summaries that have been in your packet for the operating budget for fiscal year 23 obviously have been provided for you. You've had an opportunity to look them over, and I'll certainly entertain any questions before moving on to the off budget reports.
The bottom line is that we're on target.
Bottom line is that we're still on target. Obviously December will be halfway through, and we'll take a look at where we are. There'll be some line items that we run over it and some items that we don't. And our goal is obviously to end in the black.
Question. Just quickly, there's professional development for support and field services, but on the general expenditures, it's called something different. It's called professional education.
Yeah, that's just the way the town codes it. Part of that new system that the town is using. So every year when we do the budget, we try to make little tweaks here and there to what we call line items. And that certainly can be one that we ask our finance director to take a look
To
at.
just make it
Yes, it's
consistent.
consistent. You know, we've had issues through the year. There's like the uniform cleaning one. Everyone always thinks that's just for cleaning, but it actually supplies uniforms. There was a long time ago where one of our vendors was questioned because the name of his company has rug cleaning in it. And the Board of Finance thought we were cleaning the rugs every day. That's obviously not what we're doing. So we try to work on all those little things. So we'll certainly make a note and see if we can adjust that coming this next budget season.
Thank you.
Hearing no other questions on the operating budget, you have the summary for the off-budget accounts. Only 3 changes this month, 1 to police uniforms and awards, 1 to emergency dispatch, and 1 to police admin. I believe the majority of those were deposits, with the exception of the police admin account, which I believe we wrote a check to Dr. Lynn for some of his services in hiring our new folks.
I was just curious. There's an item for precious metal permit. I've not seen that before. What's that about?
It's an annual thing, so people that deal with precious metals need to get a permit through the department, basically saying that they're not convicted felons and they're able to operate their business. It's part of the regulatory process, and we're part of that process.
Like a pistol permit.
Similar, yeah, similar, not as in depth, but similar type of service. We do bingo permits. We're involved in the issuance of liquor permits. There's lots of different permitting activities that run for our office.
Thank you for the explanation.
Okay, to go to the fiscal 24 budget process.
Certainly, I take it there's nothing to report under personnel matters.
We're not there.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yes, the budget process.
Yes, okay. So, you know, I've been working on the department's budget, even some of my senior patrolman days. And every year it seems to get quicker or sooner, I guess I can say, sooner on the calendar. So we just got a notice a couple weeks ago from the finance director on how the process will be moving along this year. So by charter, budgets are still due to the first selectman by January 15th. But they did ask, so they're due by department heads by that time. And they asked that boards and commissions finalize their budgets or approve them in December. So I think we're still comfortable, still approving ours, you know, the first week or second week of January, as long as it's done and I can submit it by the 15th. So they've notified us of some of the things that they've already included. They've already given us our draft budgets. So 2.5% general wage increase for all non-union employees. They want us to figure about a 10% increase in all medical care costs. And they're providing us with the numbers to input into our budget for life insurance and workers' compensation. They're also going to use a system this year called ClearGov, which is a online budgeting tool that I think is supposed to make the budget process a little bit more transparent or maybe accessible to the public. So it'll be year 1. I haven't watched the webinar yet. I haven't had the training on that, but I think that Leanne will be uploading documents after it goes to the first selectman. And that way people can kind of watch the budget process virtually as it goes through the charter process to approve a budget. So I think we'll be on track. I think we'll have a budget to you know, mid to late December for you to look at. And then, you know, maybe we can start talking about when those special meetings would be in January to discuss and approve the budget.
The sooner the better is always the case.
Yeah, and I'm with you on that. What makes it difficult, and we talk about this every year, but what makes it difficult is we're going to start talking about the fiscal year 24 budget in December, right? And there's going to be so much that happens to the budget after this board technically approves the budget. Healthcare is never going to be nailed down in December or early January. Right? We're probably not going to get those final numbers until it's well into the Board of Finance process. So I think we have to do the best we can. We look at a spending plan. We already know that 90% of the budget is fixed personnel costs. And so it's not to diminish the commission's role by any way whatsoever. there's just only so much that's there, which, by the way, shows that we have a good solid budget. If there was a lot of decisions to be made in our budget, it would show that we had all these funds dedicated to things that were not necessary or that were not contractually mandated. But look, we're concerned about inflation, right? Everything in your own house costs more. Everything in the police department house is going to cost more. We're still not under contract for gasoline because that's such a moving target. The natural gas to heat the building and cool the building is obviously fluctuating as well. And I would expect that those things will continue to fluctuate for the near future. So whether we raise those or whether we hold the line and hope for the best is, I guess up to me to decide what to present to you. And then you folks can have that conversation, but we're certainly going to do it. My budget is going to reflect what the town administration, town finance director is doing in all of the budgets, right? So I don't think that on the municipal side of the house, each department should be doing their own thing. I think there should be a methodology to how we're budgeting. And so I will listen to their guidance and heed their guidance.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Okay,
I don't envy you having to do this, not in this environment where everything is just up and down.
Yeah, to be honest with you, we're gonna take the contracts. We're gonna plug in the numbers. I've talked to you about the new sergeant schedule for quite some time. I'm gonna see if I can make some adjustments in the percentage on how we budget backfilling the sergeants. But even, a little bit of a change, if I go from 90 to 85% or from 90 to 80%, which might be a stretch, that's not going to equate to a lot of dollars and cents in our $5 million budget, right? So I don't take it for granted on how much of a piece of the pie we have on the municipal side of the house. And I'm willing to justify every penny, but I don't want to make reductions just to say we're making reductions and then put ourselves in peril come May and June and have to explain why we didn't have enough money to fund certain things. So
to fund that next hire.
right. And so it's a delicate process, but it is the process. I don't think it's a difficult process. Sometimes it gets a little bit overly emotional. I like to try to keep emotion out of it and treat it as a business document, which is exactly what it is. It's a spending plan for the Department of Police Service.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'll talk about personnel matters real quickly. Let me hit employee discipline first, and then I can update you on some other things. So in accordance with Department Regulation 5514, it's my responsibility as the Chief of Police to report any discipline that has been imposed by any member of the department. So my report is one police officer was issued a written reprimand for violating Section 6 of the Old Saybrook Department of Police Services System of Directives and Professional Standards, entitled Committing Unsafe Acts or Endangering Self or Others. And the discipline was accepted without grievance by the employee.
Would it be appropriate to elaborate on the nature of the infraction?
It was an internal investigation that surrounded a motor vehicle accident. The accident was investigated both from the standpoint of the motor vehicle accident and administratively, and that was the result of the administrative investigation.
Chief, you mentioned no grievance, and of course I know grievances don't mean there's an issue, it's just part of the process. Would it be okay to just, any updates on any other grievances, anything else pending? We haven't heard about it in a while.
Yeah, no current grievances.
Okay.
A grievance doesn't mean something good or bad is happening. A grievance is it's a negotiated process that if you feel that you've been aggrieved or there's been a violation of the labor contract, the collective bargaining agreement, there's a process. First you come to me and say, hey, we think the rules weren't followed, and whether I say yes or no, I can settle at my standpoint. If not, it goes to the commission, then to the Board of Selectmen, and then to mediation. But no, there are no current grievances.
Thank you.
Our custodian, Pat Hanley, still remains out on paid sick leave. He should remain out until around December, and then we're hoping to have him return. Just keep in mind, he's been out since middle of March. And so everyone's been pitching in, and we really appreciate the work of our contract cleaners, keeping up with the maintenance around the building during his absence. I also want to let you know that we have entered into a new memorandum of understanding with our police union with respect to the patrol sergeant promotional process. By the way, this was all done without attorneys, no big meetings, zero cost to the town, which is great, and I appreciate the new union leadership's leadership, quite frankly. So the only change was you have to have 3 years as a certified Connecticut police officer to take the sergeant's exam, and only one of those years has to be an Old Saybrook. It used to be 2. So the union has acknowledged, quite frankly, that any experience as a certified Connecticut law enforcement professional is good enough to meet the requirements, and that obviously helps us out operationally. So it was great working with the new leadership of the bargaining unit to get that accomplished.
Good report.
We go on to the fleet, if you like. Okay.
Unless there are any questions? No, go ahead, please.
Thank you. 2 accidents to report. One was a significant damage, about $14,000 worth of damage that happened out of town, and we were at fault in that accident. And the other accident was a minor accident when someone who was intoxicated sideswiped one of our vehicles. That person was subsequently arrested. And so both those vehicles will wind up getting, fixed through the insurance process. Speaking of insurance, I'll do it under fleet, I guess. 2 claims still pending. So all the new doors have arrived. They've been there for about a week and a half, 2 weeks, maybe even longer. And there they sit. So we're waiting for the people to come pick up the doors, take out the old doors, and put the new doors in. So that was supposed to be a seamless process. They were supposed to kind of like arrive on a Monday, start getting installed on a Tuesday, but we have not seen that yet.
If it has to do with construction, it's not seamless.
Yes. And then we had a lightning strike about 3.5 weeks ago. I believe I reported that to the commission via email. And we are noticing different things happening. The latest thing, oddly enough, our boiler, which was recently replaced from a previous lightning strike. We lost hot water. The technician came out, took out one of the circuit boards. There's a big black spot on the back of it. Using my firefighter knowledge, I know that that's not good. We confirmed that. So we're again working with the insurance company who has already used their software to determine that yes, the tower on Main Street did sustain a direct hit by lightning. We have an employee in the parking lot who also witnessed that. He's just ready to start speaking again. And that bat fed into the building and caused some damage to the different equipment that I've reported to you. So we're working those 2 claims as well. With respect to the fleets, I'm currently soliciting bids from different places that purchase old police cars, refurbish them, and sell them to police departments. So I'm trying to find out if anyone is interested in buying the lot of cars. We'll take it all for this price. And if that meets the trade-in price, we're good. If not, I can come back to you. So I would say by the November meeting, I will be coming to you with a final plan on what we're doing with the end of the vehicles, the rest of the vehicles. Either we're going to sell them in bulk, there's cars that we've sold, or there's vehicles that the highest bid is under the trade-in value, and what would you like to do with them? There is one vehicle that does not have an engine. And what I think we should do is just send that to Calamari's, and whatever we get for that, and call it a day. There seems to be absolutely no interest in purchasing a car that does not have an engine.
I can't imagine that.
But yes, so I don't know if we can get consensus on that tonight, really not an action item on the agenda, but if it's okay with the commission, I'd like to dispose of that on how you would dispose a car that's never going to run again.
I heard the other night that we have 60 police cars, so I just thought
Wow.
maybe moving some of them along on the parking lot.
We should hire someone to manage the 60 police cars.
A new resident in town.
And it's gonna have to be towed, we're gonna tow it somewhere, get it crushed, and then whatever we get, we get. But the car's filled with mold and what's that? Yeah, there are places that come pick them up. The car's filled with mold. I mean, in all in good conscience, we're not gonna sell this car.
May I poll just to get a consensus of your commission on junking this one. Mr. Maselli, you're in favor?
Yeah.
Me as well.
I'm in
Unanimous.
favor, but rather than crushing it, like I said, there's places that take them and dismantle and recycle and resell.
I'm sorry?
There's places that take them and dismantle and recycle and sell stuff rather than it just being crushed.
Should they pay you for it?
Yeah.
Well, send me the names.
I will.
So, if the cars
I
don't
didn't
sell,
see you sitting.
I'm over here.
I was just thinking, we're missing two commissioners.
Yeah, no,
but we're
no,
not.
okay.
We're only missing one.
I would love to go back to discuss, if the cars don't sell, or even, I would just love to make the decision now to reuse some of the cars for SROs. I would love to implement them. I know that we need them and we have them, they're 2014s, right? And they're,
So,
yeah, and I think it would just be a really good move and investment and well worth it at the end of the day.
So, one of the things that the SROs forgot to mention last meeting, they're all like, dang it, we forgot to mention this. So the SROs come in the morning at various times, and their goal is to check in with the sergeant. Anything happened on the midnight shift they need to know about at the schools, and then to get the school campuses. And sometimes it's, well, you can't have the car they had yesterday because we need it for this, or this one's in the shop, and da da da. And it becomes sometimes an operational nightmare for the SROs. When I was an SRO, I actually had a dedicated vehicle dedicated to that SRO position, because I was encouraged to stay after school and go to a soccer game or watch the field hockey girls play a game and not have to be confined by the time that car needs to be back to put in service for patrol. So if that was a thought, the only thing I would say, the only couple things I would say would be this, just thinking out loud. One would be that before we do that, we make sure that we make the agreement that we made with the town completely whole, which we're like $5,000-6,000 away from doing, right? So I know we're going to accomplish that, but I think we would have to do that first. It'd have to be that check in the box. And then secondly, I think that we would fund the maintenance of these cars like we're funding the private duty cars, which is through our off-budget account. So there's no increased burden to the taxpayer if we choose to do this, whether it's 1, 2, or 3 cars, one for each SRO. That there's just no more burden to the taxpayer. It's the same, comes out of the same pot of money, the money the town actually earns from the private duty work. I could be supportive of something like that. I would not be supportive of adding them to the master fleet and then increasing vehicle maintenance line items in our budget and stuff like that. I think that's bad business.
All of that.
Yeah, so our insurance is an umbrella. So 3 cars doesn't really affect anything for the town. But I think, again, speaking aloud, I think the cars kind of schoolish, like make them blue and white, stick a nice ram on them, put the school names on them or something. I think that might be a neat thing if, you're really
Well,
interested.
what that suggests to me is an analysis of the 2 options. What's the cost of one, what's the cost of the other, what's the benefit of one, what's the benefit of the other, what are the trade-offs? I, for one, don't think we should have a police car at the schools that looks like anything other than a God-right police car. It's a message that it sends.
he's not saying that it won't look like police.
Yeah,
He's
definitely
saying that
police
there'll be a
cars.
random.
You might say Goodwin School on it, right?
Yeah.
To give some ownership to Goodwin School. Think about that. I would discuss that with the SROs, but maybe it's an agenda item for November where I can present those 2 options.
Yeah,
Let's
I think
do that.
that's a good idea.
I mean, it's a burden on them every morning, the SROs, and I'm sure the rest of the police officers to figure out what cars you're using, to get them back, and that's our job, is to help the police officers and try to lessen that burden, so.
Yeah, the poor SROs, I would say, jump the most cars.
Yeah. Yeah, so
They should be one.
important.
Jumpstart the cars,
Oh, boy.
right? And so, if we can minimize that, that'd be great. So if that's okay, we'll throw that on as an agenda item. Let me work up a proposal, but again, we must make the town whole first. which I believe we're going to in short order, and then implement this. No, it's got to be no increase to the taxpayer. That's the only way. You do what you want. The only way I would say I would recommend.
And I also like the idea of it coming out of the budgets as long as we can support it that way.
Chief, how many like patrol cars have you actually sold?
So we've sold 3 cars so far, technically 4, but one of them was a scam. And so we decided not to send them gift cards to get them to take our car. We've sold 3 cars, and I think we're like $4,000 or $5,000 away from getting that.
Were they the like patrol cars with the?
Yeah, they were patrol cars. Yeah, some went, some did not win. They never met our minimum bid. One of them was the old K9 car, which I'm really shocked about, quite frankly. I thought that would do really, really well. And we get a lot of calls. Hey, I'll buy that car for you. And I'm not a used car salesman. That's not what I do during the day. And so because it's a municipal vehicle, municipal asset, there's got to be a way to do it. We stuck 4 sale signs on them and put them next to our scarecrow. I'm sure I could move them quicker, but that's just not the process that the municipality, uses. So hopefully we put that on the agenda for November. I'll know where we are with the other cars, and we'll just try to wrap up the fleet in November, if that's all the plan to everybody else. And Renee, if you can send me those business names, I'll look into that and see which one is the most profitable for the town.
Which is nice because you don't have to pay to get a tow.
I would like just to have it leave the parking lot. Would be fantastic.
Okay, professional development update.
Yeah, so a little bit of professional development going on this past month. So the Police Officer Association of Connecticut had their first annual police summit. And that was attended by Captain Perry, Master Sergeant DeMarco, Sergeants Walsh and Hardy, Detective First Class Williams, and Patrolman Millardo. A lot of really interesting topics there. A lot on the new legislation, a lot on possibly, new legislation that's going to be proposed. So the regular street officer or patrol supervisor understands how new legislation can actually impact their daily role on the street. Use of force, criminal law, and they threw in some media training for the younger officers, so maybe they have a little bit more of an understanding of how all that works. So they were all impressed with the presentations and good professional development for them. Then our leadership team, folks in the room, myself, the captain, the master sergeant, Sergeants Walsh, Ciccone, Hardy, Mikowski, Detective First Class Williams, dispatchers Adams and Gosselin, had a training on the new risk protection order, which involves every police officer in our agency. Certainly involves a little bit more work on my and the captain's part with some additional supervision, impacts records, and certainly impacts dispatch. So we had one of our state attorneys come down and run us through the new process. Process began in June. Quite frankly, the state has a new law, but they really don't have all the mechanisms in place to enforce or make sure that new law is followed through appropriately. So the Middlesex County Judicial District took it upon themselves to say, this is what the rules will be for our county. No other county in the state has done that. And so I applaud our state's attorney's office for doing so, because now we have a protocol to follow. And so we'll be doing that. Generally, this has to do with anytime someone is wishing either self-harm or has homicidal thoughts, that we go through the process and make sure that they are not able to obtain a firearms permit in the future without having a hearing first. And so this is just an added level of protection for individuals and the community at large. It will increase the work that we have to do. So we just did our first one and it turned out to be about 2.5 hours. We've already been subpoenaed to go to the hearing. And so we've created a new time status, or we'll be creating a new time status so we can actually track how much time we're spending on this specific new risk protection order that came out of new legislation. So we can provide feedback and say, okay, just so you know, if we want to keep doing this, it's, taking this much time per case to do that. And I think that'll be data that will be very, very well welcomed.
Another next gen benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, another benefit of the timekeeping system through NextGen that we created. Yeah, absolutely. Patrolman O'Connell is pretty much done with field training. We're just waiting for her to obtain her emergency medical responder EMS certification. And once she does that, she'll be released from field training and will become a personnel asset. Patrolman trainee Egan is at the police academy and enjoy wearing a tan uniform each day and eating food that looks exactly like his tan uniform every day. Patrolman Novak has finished all of his internal training with our agency, but now is doing all his comparative certification work that he has to do from being an out-of-state lateral hire. So that's about it with the professional development report.
Thank you very much.
And as I mentioned, the activity report we handed out, it was available online. Bill, thank you for mentioning that. Just a couple other things to mention. One, we assisted the fine men and women. I always forget the two guys, and they get angry at me. The men and women of the Old Saybrook Gardening Club. We did the big dig. We have the great plant and the big dig. This was the big dig. This was something we started, I don't know, 4, maybe 5 years ago now, to make sure that they're really safe when they do these activities. Tenured commissioners know that their garden club vests that they wear, we purchase from the traffic safety account, off budget account, so that's where that golf cart money goes. We always encourage the police officers working the big dig to assist. You know, you see someone tugging on a plant more than once, come on over, stick your back into it, pull up the plant. But the garden club does such an amazing job for Old Saybrook. I mean, all the beauty that we enjoy all summer long, it's all done by volunteers. We obviously don't charge them anything for our services that day. And it's a great way to get it done quickly, get it done safely, work hand in hand with another civic service group in Old Saybrook. Hopefully everyone by now has had the opportunity to drive by and see Lieutenant Crow and Canine Chamber, our scarecrow, in front of the police department. Jen came to me and said, "Can we please do a scarecrow?" I rolled my eyes and said, "No." And then I came in and I said, "Why am I going to upset her? So let's do a scarecrow." But I said, if we're going to do it, we're going big. And Lieutenant Crow is the largest scarecrow in the contest. I've asked the chamber that if we don't win by voting to create a police department category, so we would come out #1 in the category for municipal police departments, which is why we named the dog Chamber. So we're working on that, and I certainly want to avoid any civilians making a complaint to the statewide election commission, but I encourage everyone to text Scarecrow 17 to a certain number on the chamber website. We'll provide it in our minutes as well. But if you could do that this week, that would be great, and vote for the OSPD Scarecrow, because we'd like to win, if not in our own category.
And I think there's another scarecrow that Commissioner
Yeah,
Kyan.
my oldest son voted for yours and not mine.
That was then I say that's fantastic. That's fantastic.
Yes.
There's rumor is for the holiday, it might turn into Santa. We're not sure if we're going to do this or not. But, thank you to Jen and Dispatcher Gosselin and Lieutenant Perry for putting in the hard work and quietly rolling their eyes every time I came up with a new design idea.
You got all into it.
And that is it, sir. Unless you want me to go right into the next.
I think it's that time.
All right. Well, he's going to go get the star of the show.
The next item on the agenda is commission workshop, narcotic detection canine program.
Yes, so Detective First Class Williams is out to get Sky. Once he comes back, I know he has handouts for you. I don't know if those went out already.
No.
No, okay, so he should, I think he has handouts for you. They'll be given to you momentarily, that he'll be referring to from time to time during his presentation. But if you remember Canine Sky, and I don't want to steal his thunder, their first ever Labrador retriever. And many of the folks that I truly and deeply respect in the agency have said, during the past week and a half, been a little bit dark, and Sky has really been uplifting. So when you talk about those, therapy dogs, probably the big burly folks won't admit it, but having the lab around the PD, not a bad thing when things aren't. And so we appreciated Sky wandering around the last week and a half.
It's interesting you mentioned that because I noticed that all of the dogs at the funeral were lab.
They were all support dogs. It didn't bring the shepherd, so, but there's definitely something to be said for that. And Sky did her job well last week, but as soon as he comes in, he'll introduce the dog and the program. And then I'll talk a little bit about our new data keeping. I know a couple of you are interested in how we're keeping data about the dog program, and then we'll, obviously answer any questions that you want. But I certainly don't want to steal his thunder. Detective First Class Williams, while he's not in the room, I will tell you this, does a phenomenal job supervising the Criminal Investigations Division. There is a tremendous amount of work that he and Detective Tabor, his subordinate, take care of day after day after day. They're currently working a homicide case that they're both putting a lot of time in. We had that other critical incident on Center Road West that we're still working with federal agencies on. And then there's lots of search warrants that support soon-to-be arrest warrants. And if it was without their expertise and their work, let alone being called out to go to scenes to process and DNA swabbing and all those things that are really solving crimes, they just do a tremendous amount of work. And so the addition of the canine responsibility, he is taken on, and he's just doing a really, really super job with it. So perfect time. So with that, I will turn it over to Detective First Class Williams, who will tell you about his partner, Sky.
Dr. Williams, welcome. Please come on. Center Square.
We'll bring the lab to the FY area.
Very, very fun.
So you guys don't appreciate you having me. Those of you who don't know me, I'm 54 introduce me, but my name is Detective First Class Eric Williams. I'm a police officer here for 10 years now. I've been assigned in the Detective Bureau for the last 3 and supervising the Bureau for the last 1.5 years. End of last year, in 2021, I was fortunate enough to be selected as the department's first ever Labrador Retriever canine handler, which was very exciting. A few short weeks later, we got Sky, which was great. Sky comes from a program called the Guiding Eyes for the Blind. They're a program out of New York. They specialize, if you guys have heard of them, in helping provide service dogs for people that are visually impaired. What happened with Sky, and she went to a puppy raiser for about 2 years, and what these families do that are approved through the Guiding Eyes program is they agree and sign a contract to bring the dog to different appointments that they have, obviously not only with the vet, but also with the company to help them along in the process. And after about 2 years, they test the dog out and they want to see if they're able to work in a official capacity for the program and obviously get assigned to someone to help them guide themselves around, obviously.
Quick interruption, if I may. Is Guiding Eyes for the Blind another name for the Seeing Eye Foundation, or are they different organizations?
I believe they're separate.
So she, so I'm not giving her a complex, but she is actually a failure of the program, but she's one of the exceptions because I was fortunate enough to be able to meet actually the puppy raisers for Sky. They actually were very nice. They came to my graduation back in May, which was awesome. And I've actually kept in touch with the mother. She actually made me this book with all Sky's puppy photos, which was great. He loves Mr. King.
Frank, what do you have in your pocket?
So Sky was actually one of the only ones, she actually passed all 4 of the qualifications that the program requires, which was pretty cool. The only thing that she failed out on, if you will, was she was too loving. So she essentially cared more about the person that was giving her the command or trying to help her out than trying to help them, deter her from hitting something essentially. So we were very fortunate in that regard because we were able to get her to come work for us down here. The Connecticut State Police go and actually pick out the canines from the program. So they go up there and they go and test out the dogs essentially. So they want to see their hunt drive. They want to see how the dogs react to different situations. So they went up and Sky was one of 9 that they actually purchased and brought back. I had 10 in my class. 1 came from a different breeder. But the 9 came back and then we were able to go up and kind of meet the dogs and see which ones we bond with the most. I was fortunate again, Sky, in my opinion, best dog in the class, but she also had the same exact birthday, same month of year as my son, so it was kind of cool. So it was kind of meant to be, if you will. So they brought her back and we got her back in December. Brought her around to the schools. The Goodwin School was kind enough to give her her name. They had a little contest with that. Brought her around to see the kids and everything. She's amazing with children. I have two of my own, so she's very familiar with it and getting her ears pulled and trying to be tugged on and whatnot. But she's awesome with the kids. So Goodwin was kind enough to get her name for us. So back in February, she went to her first 6 weeks of training with the Connecticut State Police. The first 6 weeks of training is actually just her, so I did not go with just the dogs. And that's when they do the imprinting. So that's essentially all they're doing is crawl, walk, and run. They're literally teaching the dog, hey, here are the narcotic odors. We want you to learn how to smell. And when you smell them, this is what we want you to do. Obviously, that takes thousands and thousands and thousands of repetitions. But she did excellent. She did great. 6 weeks in, we then get to go up there. So I went up with 9 other officers from around the state from various departments, and we started our 6 weeks. So it's 12 weeks total in the training program to get certified. And that's actually what's sitting on the top of your packets there. So that's actually the what they give us on day one, and they say, hey, in 5 weeks you're going to do all this, and you sit there and you get white in the face and you say, how am I going to be able to do that? So the first day we actually don't even use a dog. We just have to walk around the room with a leash and pretend we have a dog on there. So that was a lot of fun. That was very, very different than anything all of us were ever used to.
How did you do?
Yeah, right, exactly. That's what she would listen to in the motor. So I got to see her on the weekends. She stayed there. We actually had the option to pick them up, but we are a little busy here, as you guys know. So there's a couple nights I took her home. The biggest thing is letting her kind of not only acclimate with the other dogs, with labs. That's one of the great things is they're able to obviously all be together, unlike the shepherds. So she was able to stay with all 9 of her classmates, and they all were in the kennels of the state police together. And also they varied the schedule. So it was a little tough. They switched between days and evenings. So sometimes they were eves, next day they're days. So I would not have to pick her up at 11 p.m. and go drop her off at 7 a.m. So I would just leave her up there. So she did stay there for the most part, but she did come home on the weekends with me. She obviously lived with my family. But yeah, so the six weeks we go up there is all us learning how to not mess the dog up, because the dog knows exactly what she or he needs to do. It's the handler that ends up messing the dog up essentially. So we had to learn all the different nuances and different things we were doing wrong and how to not, let the dog cue off of us. So it's, blading your body. It's not tugging on the leash, not making eye contact with them, not stepping too close, not being too far away. It's all these different little things. And I've been very fortunate. I've been to a lot of different professional development things in my career. I've been an instructor now with PD for 7 years with the state. I've been FDO for about 7 years now. I've trained over a dozen officers now with the police department, but this is probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to do in my law enforcement career. It's something that I was getting very frustrated with because it was my fault, not hers, but it wasn't, we weren't getting the outcome that we wanted. Thankfully, we worked through all the speed bumps, and we're very fortunate that at week 5, we did certify. So our certification is through NESPAC. It's the New England State Police Administrators Conference. And that is the certification that Sky and myself hold. So we are a certified canine team. She can't be worked by another handler and I can't work another dog. So our certification is for the 2 of us. And what that certification is a odor recognition test. So that is when a member of the state lab, a certified chemist actually comes in. So it's a blind test giver, and he comes in and he essentially says, all right, here are 6 different narcotic odors in the room. Your dog has to tell me which one and where they are, and not false alert to different things that they try to lure the dog with, such as food, latex, cleaning materials, all the things that the dog's going to be present with in narcotic odors as well. So she did excellent. She passed with flying colors. She got 100 and got certified in the rest of the field. So the rest of the fields are actually given by our instructors with the Connecticut State Police. They are NESPAC certified instructors. It's outdoor searches, building searches, or room searches, something similar to this. So you're just smelling everything around the room. We do bags or parcels as well. We do lockers, such as like in a school setting. And then she has a lab, which is nice as opposed to the shepherd. She's actually able to do people searches as well. So she can actually search a person for obvious reasons. She's not gonna bite them. She ever might, bite someone unfortunately if they move furtively. So she does people searches as well. And then obviously the big one for her is vehicles. So she does vehicles as well. So we get through all those certifications, and then obviously the order recognition test is the big one. And then she was certified back on May 13th was our graduation day. So if you flip through the packet in the middle is actually, let's talk about the logs we have to keep. So the training logs right there are actually what our certification is based off of. So Sky is again NESPAC certified. The requirements through NESPAC is not only do we have to keep a daily training log, which is obviously what and where she's finding narcotics. As you can see on the list here, there's a bunch of different areas that we try to mix up and change not only locations, but also different venues. So we're not only, doing vehicles every day, she's doing people searches sometimes, she's doing, warehouses, she's doing the cubbies we have in the garage, something like that. But we try to mix it up every day. We have to log and document every rep that we do, all the hours we spend training. And on the back side of that, of the second page in your packets, is actually where we document and log everything that she's doing for that specific day. Not only the drug that she's finding, but also how she's responding to the training and everything like that. So NESPAC not only requires us to submit those, and the state police keep the records of those, so we have those up at the State Police Academy. But we also have to attend quarterly training sessions. So that's 3 8-hour sessions 4 times a year that we have to go to and do continual education or training. So Sky actually just went to her second ever training now, which oddly enough is actually recertification. So what they do is they get all the canine narcotic teams in the state on the same training schedule. So we have 6 weeks to pick from every quarter. So we go and they send out an email, they say, all right, here are your 6 weeks. We obviously can only do 10 teams at a time. There's just over 60 in the state. And they let us know, we divvy it up and we all go to training. Because the way the state does it, they want her to be certified in October and November. So she actually just, even though she's certified in May, she just recertified last week. So she got 100 again, which was great. So she is recertified now for another year. Again, as long as we continue submitting our logs and going to the quarterly trainings, which is awesome. So Sky is obviously much different than all the other canines, which you guys have ever really heard of. Labs are kind of it's a newer thing in policing, not necessarily very new, but for smaller agencies like us and for people out in the public, they really don't know too much about the Labrador Retriever programs and the detection work. So she is a food reward dog. So what that means is she eats from my hand. So her entire working life from back when we started the academy, she will never have a meal that's not from my hand. So she needs to, why she's, again, smells everything anywhere she goes, is she needs to find narcotics in order to eat. So she did eat earlier today, but what that means is I'm essentially hiding drugs, if you will, every single day. So that's how she gets her food. She has obviously an allotted amount, just like any of you guys have personal pets at home. You feed your dog, 1 cup in the morning, 1 cup at night. She eats 1 time during the day. That's it. We vary that to obviously make sure she's not accustomed to, hey, I'm eating in the morning, or I'm eating at night, middle of the day, stuff like that. So I mix it up. I have work a 5-day work week on the Detective Bureau, so I am fortunate that the 5 of the days we try to mix it up while we're at work. Sometimes it's after work, just so she's used to that if we get called in or something like that. But then also, obviously, when I'm off, I have to feed her as well. So I am assigned drugs through the DEA, the department is, and then I'm one of the handlers for it. We are assigned scheduled narcotics. So she is trained in methamphetamine, heroin, MDMA or ecstasy, crack cocaine, and cocaine. So those are the 5 drugs that she is certified in. There's obviously derivatives of that. So synthetic opiates are a big one now that we're seeing. Obviously, that's something like Suboxone, if you guys have ever heard of that. But we don't trade her in that for obvious reasons, but she is trained. Yes, so there is a strand of the heroin that will be present in the fentanyl, so she will alert to it. She's also prescribed Narcan for that exact reason. So if she ever was, God forbid, to detect that and smell it, and got it obviously in her nose, she could obviously overdose. It is actually unfortunately common. Close to us, Madison's dog, unfortunately a couple years ago did overdose. Thankfully lived, obviously, but she can be administered Narcan. She'd obviously be rushed to Piper after that and be put on a Narcan drip, just like an officer would if we ever got exposed. But she's not. The way that the license, yeah, she take it through. So what's interesting about the food reward program is it's obviously, not only is it more burdensome on us, not only for obviously the food we have to purchase, because again, she's eating a little bit more, not necessarily a lot more than a shepherd would, but she is eating a little bit more. And again, we're feeding her every single day. So she's what's great about that is she's getting the training in it every single day. So she's getting to work and find drugs in all different environments. So her certification is also based off of strictly her training, which is why they're so stringent on us keeping the logs, going to the quarterly certs and everything like that. So it's very odd to us, and I told the chief this in the cabinet when I got back from training. I just couldn't really wrap my mind around this when I first learned this, that all of her training certifications, my testimony for everything like that is all based off her training. Nothing is based off the real world. So obviously for us, that's very different than what we're used to. So again, all the things we're testifying to and saying is fact is that I know exactly where I'm hiding the drugs. I know what they are, I know where they are, and I know that she's alerting and positively telling me they're there. Why that changes in a real world scenario is she's obviously still alerting the presence of narcotics, but we can't say if they're actually there or not, right? So obviously, ideal world, perfect situation, me and the chief would love this. Every car I stop, she alerts to, there's a pound of cocaine in the car, right? Unfortunately, and this just happened this past week, is we'll stop someone, she'll alert to the car, good alert, everything's great. We go search the car, we find a bunch of empty baggies. They're for drug packaging, obviously, they have residue in them, something like that. But we're not making an actual arrest on the person because they obviously just delivered the product and now don't have it on their person or in their vehicle. So that's why obviously your certification is based off of training experiences, not real world experiences. Obviously, we still document all that stuff. We obviously NextGen is great for that. We have a canine card for the case when she actually is utilized in the field. So all that stuff's documented and utilized, but it was a weird thing for me to learn that everything was based off of training and not real world, because obviously we're very different from that. We're based off work product and what tangible things you've done, obviously. So, but she's been great. She again did amazing in training. I was very, very happy with that. Again, nerve-wracking for me because it was the first thing I've ever done where I didn't have control over really. Yes, I had to trust the training we had done, but I'm sending her into a room saying, all right, where's the drugs? Because I don't know. And then she's sitting at it, they put them in paint cans and she's sitting at a paint can and I'm telling the gentleman there and I'm like, all right, well, she says it's right there. And they say yes or no. And that's the extent of it. So you do that you walk around a gym and you do that 6 different times and they tell you pass or fail essentially. So it's definitely an interesting thing. It was one of the most challenging things I've ever done in my career, but also one of the most rewarding ones too, because it's been nothing short of great getting to work with her and getting to see and really truly trust her. I remember telling the chief their first find was actually down a gentleman's pants, and I obviously was like, yeah, okay, that's not the case, and sure as heck we bring him back and they were the drugs down his pants. So she was right on the money. She knew exactly where they were and what was going on, but it was truly at, then you truly start trusting her and saying, all right, she's locked in, she's good to go. So, no, I think other than that, I mean, you guys have questions, I'd be happy to answer them, but.
When you say hand feeding, I understand that, means eating out of your hand, but do you feed her out of your hand 30 times a day? Or
that's right. Close to 30. It's usually I try to go between 14 and 24 usually. Sometimes it's more obviously in training, a lot more because we're doing 8 hours worth of it. Other times, depending on what we have going on at the PD, it's a little bit less. I try to always hit about 14, but so what's interesting about her too in the lab is that a shepherd obviously can be trained in narcotic if they're selected to the program. That's one thing I think a lot of people understand too is the cross training of the dog. They actually have to be accepted too. So just because you have a German shepherd who's certified in patrol and tracking does not mean they can go to narcotic. They actually have to get evaluated and accepted by the state police to be able to get into that program. Some dogs, obviously, you guys have ever seen some of the dogs barking and listen to the car shake. They are not accepted into the program. But what's nice about the lab as opposed to the shepherd is showing you one time. So they're just like the lab, just like the vision and everything like that. But they're going in, they're finding the drugs, they're sitting just like she would, and they're getting rewarded with a ball or a toy. They get to play with it a little bit. The handler takes the ball away, and then they move on to the next thing. Whereas with a lab, she actually gets 2 alerts for every one find she has, if you will. So what happens is Sky's going to come in. She's going to tell me there's drugs in this bag right here. She'll sit down. I will, if it's a training situation, again, real life, I do not feed her. So in a training situation, I know they're in there. I'm feeding her, give her the command, and then I give a command called show me. That means she's going to tell me and show me exactly where the drugs were that she found that time. So she actually gets to eat twice for every one hot she finds. You can even extend that if you don't like the way she responded or something like that. You can actually extend it to 3, 4. There's really no limit on it as long as she's properly demonstrating what you want her to do. So that is one of the kind of the cool things I think is that she actually gets, it's like a 2-for-1 pretty much every time, which is nice. So she actually gets essentially double the training when we go every time. Because we do train with the Malinois, the Shepherds, everything like that, as well as all the labs. So
So keeping that in perspective, this is every day. Okay, so Detective First Class Williams does not legit get a day off. So Sky goes home with his family and he must do the hand feeding and the training and the documentation every day, right? So some people look at the budget and like, wow, a $10,000 stipend. Well, I do that. I'm sure there are times where someone might wake up and not want to hand feed and train and document a dog 24 times a day on the day off. And so it's a lot of personal responsibility in addition to the professional responsibility of having a lab, food reward dog.
And how about vacations?
So that's actually a great point. And just to touch real quick before I answer that, like Chief was saying, so about the feeding on my days off, one of the things too, not to burn you what I have to do every day, but she actually doesn't eat at my house. She really shouldn't and really can't eat at my house because that's like her safe zone, right? So she shouldn't be thinking about work when she's trying to relax with my family. So I actually have to pretty much take her somewhere on my days off. So that is one other thing that we deal with. But for the vacation, so that's another great point and something we've never dealt with before. And we learned quickly is that she actually has to go to essentially someone who's certified and able to feed her and handle her and train her. So that is not any really other than canine handlers because they're not food reward dogs. So all the past 6 dogs that we've had here have all been toy or ball reward. So they actually couldn't even watch my dog, which is an interesting thing, something we again learned pretty quickly. So she actually is gone. I haven't gone away. I do take days off. And she went up to the Department of Corrections through the state police. They house a couple kennels around the state and are very accommodating with accepting municipal dogs. They just ask how to provide the food and some advance notice so that they can watch the dog. But it's nice because the Department of Corrections actually staffs their kennels full time. So their DOC Department of Correction officers are actually assigned as canine handlers. That's all they do. They don't get assigned to a facility. They're simply assigned to a kennel. So she gets very, very good attention when she goes there. I'm actually going away soon and she's actually going to the state police. So she is able to stay at the state police kennel up in Meriden where I went to training as well. So there are a couple options which we utilize. And obviously when that happens, the chief's made aware that he's provided all the contact information and everything like that. God forbid some is to happen, but she's in great hands every time.
How much of your day on average is spent with the dog versus your other duties?
So usually the training each day is about an hour. Again, I try to, for the most part, we do mix it up. We try to, because of the time of day, obviously I work day shift. And I'll sometimes feed her most of the time during my shift. And again, in different locations, either in the building or outside the building. I've been very fortunate. Some of the businesses in town have let me go in and obviously it's kind of a delicate thing. So again, we're going to do a demonstration, but obviously they are narcotics and, I have to be out of the room at one point and back in the room. So we have to make it as controlled as possible. So it is something we kind of vetted a little bit and where I go and who I train with is obviously we can't really select that, but yeah, it's an hour a day is minimum is what we do for the training. And again, that's not only the feeding, but I have to obviously wear certain special gloves when I take the drugs out. I have to clean them when I put them away. I have a lockbox in my car. I have to put them away, take them out. I then have to complete the log when I get back to make sure I'm documenting it all properly and everything like that. So
And all that gets audited as well as you can imagine. So it's not just Detective First Class Williams saying, there's still X number of grams of whatever. So a couple quick things that I want to hit on before the end of the presentation. So the last item in the packet that Detective First Class Williams gave you, he alluded to in his presentation called the canine card. That's just the technical jargon used by NextGen. What I want the commission to understand, however, is that there is a process in our new records management system where there are very detailed records kept of every time the dog is utilized in the field. And so we won't always share that publicly because, as I've alluded to in other commission meetings, sometimes there are ongoing narcotics investigations, which we would not be briefing you as members of the public or members of the commission on until there's an arrest or the adjudication is over. But what I want to do is show you an example of the detailed notes that Detective First Class Williams must make when Sky is utilized and how the data is kept. We are not using Sky 2 or 3 times a day, every day. If we were doing that, we'd have a serious drug problem in the town of Old Saybrook, right? So, Sky is used appropriately. She is not on patrol because Detective First Class Williams is not on patrol. But I assigned her to Detective First Class Williams for a lot of different reasons, and one of them was not to have her on patrol, to have her used and called out for special circumstances. A majority of them are some sensitive cases and detailed cases that the Detective First Class is working on himself, or his subordinate Detective Taylor is working on. But he's available to go out and has gone out. We can read that in the notes, where he has gone out to a car stop or made a car stop himself, and utilized a narcotics dog to either make an arrest or further an investigation. So one of the things he mentioned in his presentation is how Sky very recently alerted on a vehicle, and when they searched the vehicle, they found used wrappers that drugs were once in. Hopefully you guys caught that. That's how sensitive this dog is. And so generally, if you have used drug wrappers in your car, you're probably doing something that's not legal. And so that becomes part of a future investigation. So it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out, how to detect the drugs or how to follow someone where we find empty drug wrappers in your car. So if you're a drug dealer, stop keeping the wrappers in your car, because then we know exactly who you are. But the data will be kept, and I can brief you on that from time to time. But this is not you're not going to see as many uses of the dog as you would red light violations of a police officer looking at that. We don't want that for our community, right? But we need the resource. And the second thing I wanted to touch on, and I know we're not going to get into a full-blown discussion on it, but initially when I wrote the memo to the police commission and I said, hey, let's try a lab. We've always been a 2-dog canine program, and for the first time, let's try a narcotics lab. And in that memo, I alluded to the fact that we'll be able to cross-train the Labrador to both do the narcotics work and then obviously do the searching and tracking. And so in discussion with Detective First Class Williams, after he finished the training, we talked about that. And he brought up a really good point. 100% of her time is dedicated to training for narcotics. If we attempt to cross-train her, we run the following risk. 1, she's not as good at narcotics detection as she once was, keeping in mind that now her training in narcotics detection is reduced by 50%, because the other 50% has to be spent on tracking. 2, she's a food reward dog, which would mean right now we learn that on his days off, he hides things 14 to 24 times a day to feed the dog. I'm not so sure how long all of his kids are going to want to play hide and go seek from Sky, or how effective that will be 14 to 24 days just to get fed, because she can't be trained ball reward for one technique and food reward for the other. And so since the time of my writing the memo and becoming more educated, I now know through speaking with my subject matter expert, who's Detective First Class Williams, that is not a good plan for this dog. That the town of Old Saybrook should not risk losing a premier narcotics dog and some talented assets she brings to the table by risking it and sending it to tracking school. Which is why I still think we need a tracking dog that can be used for other reasons as well. So I think that's a nice balance for us. And I know we'll be having those discussions as the budget time gets near, but that's where I stand, and that's where Detective First Class Williams stands on sending her to additional training.
Okay, I won't read it out loud, but all right. K9 Sky alerted to the interior of the vehicle. There was drugs in there. Like, what was she alerting to?
No, so she's actually trained in tainted currency.
Oh,
So, or something wasn't there and wasn't anymore.
oh, okay.
So if we seize money from someone in a narcotics arrest and she sniffed drugs on the money, that those funds get seized.
Wow.
And it goes through a process and could wind up in our asset forfeiture account that you see every month.
Yes, it's great. And one of the big things too is, and you'll see it from this printout here, and as Kelly just pointed out, we obviously are not always in the business of just going for guilty people, right? We also exonerate the innocent. So one of the cool things that she has done, and it actually happened a couple times where people just forgot, but she does just simply check for validity in a prescription, right? So we had a couple car stops where she alerted to the vehicle. Every time I ask person the same thing, just like a driving into the influence case. Hey, do you have any narcotics in the car? My dog, a trained narcotic lab, is gonna come walk around the car. Is there anything the car is not supposed to be? No, there's not, nothing. Okay. So she comes, alerts to the car. I ask him again, oh, I totally forgot. I did have my prescription in there. All legally prescribed to them. It's in the original container. They're good to go. We don't make an arrest, but it just shows you how keen her nose is, like the chief was saying, and a lot of those were actually Suboxone filaments with a synthetic opiate, which is very, very hard to detect. You get that a lot in the Department of Corrections, but it's very, very hard to detect in the labs, and she's had 2 of those already, which has been great. And also touching on what the chief was saying about the cross-training thing, and me and him have been having discussions about this, and as you can see right now, she's not lazy by any means, but she is obviously very comfortable, as you can tell. When it's time to work, it's time to work, right? So she wears a different collar, there's a different leash I use, I obviously wear a food pouch. So she knows when it's go time, when it's time to work. The fear we had and I had about the cross-training aspect of it is, do I think she would be able to do it? I'm sure she could. But again, it's not only going to take away from my ability to ensure that she's 100% on point with the narcotics, because again, it does reduce us by 50%. So if any given week, I'm looking at probably 4 tracks, 3 narcotic or vice versa. If she does a track, and some of these, I don't know if you guys are familiar with any, they go long distances. The dog can track up to miles at a time, right? So they traditionally use a shepherd or a Malinois for that because the dogs have better stamina, have bigger lung capacity, right? The labs, yes, they can do it, but she obviously would be very tired after that. So obviously my bigger fear would be not being able to perform for the narcotic function, which is the primary function of my dog. Whereas we get a track in the morning, in the afternoon, the chief or the captain call me and say, hey, we got a case, you got to come in for narcotics. And then she doesn't want to work because she's exhausted. So that was another kind of concern of mine, again, on top of the reduced training and the proficiency she'd have in the narcotic. Again, I don't think we're taking it away completely, but in my mind, I'd say, okay, if I do something every day, I'm very comfortable with it. If I now cut that by 50%, now where we're at. Or again, if she starts doing more tracks than drugs, then you run into that whole issue too. So I know a lot of the times when I go up, and again, all the dogs in the state are great that are certified, they're awesome. But when we do go up to training, there's a difference between the shepherds, the Malinois, and the labs, because we do it every day. My dog has to find drugs to eat or else she's not eating, right? So that wouldn't be good. The shepherd guys can go almost months without actually detecting or finding narcotics because they're not actually assigned drugs, depending on the agency. Some are, which is great. A lot of them aren't. So they actually don't get to work their dogs every day in that regard. They obviously are patrol trained, so they do apprehension, they do tracking, everything like that. But they have a lot of different specialties. And when you go up to training, you talk to some of the guys that I'm friendly with them, and they're like, oh, I haven't done this in 2 months or since the last time I've been here, something like that, where I'm very fortunate to say I do this every single day. So, which is nice. Again, it's a burden, but something that I was willing to take on, and the chief was fortunate enough to give me the opportunity to do so.
So what will happen when you go on vacation? I mean, obviously, we're not probably gonna call American and say, hey, you're gonna down to dogs.
Yeah, so there are a lot of different dogs around the state that they could call for mutual aid, just like we do now. So right now, we obviously don't have a tracking or a patrol dog, so we do exactly that. We ask for mutual aid to come and assist us, just like I would go to another department too.
Okay.
So I have the ability to do that. I'm certified in the state of Connecticut, so I actually can go anywhere, depending on what the case is and the totality of it. We're not waiting an hour and a half for a car stop, but if it's a search warrant or something like that, they can actually call with the chief's permission. I can go wherever to assist.
Okay.
So we are very fortunate right now. Municipality wise, other than Middletown, obviously, we have the only narcotic lab for municipalities. There are a couple state police dogs at Troop F that are narcotic certified, but a lot of the dogs now are obviously trained in marijuana. So they are not able to be used for probable cause. They can be used on search warrants, but not for probable cause determinations, which she obviously is. So.
Thank you.
So she's not trained now?
She's not trained in marijuana. That's not one of the 5. So she's not trained in marijuana. She's not trained in anabolic steroids. So they stopped marijuana about 4 years ago, and they stopped anabolic steroids. They were finding it was prescribed too much. So they stopped training with steroids as well. So only the Department of Correction dogs are trained in marijuana currently. Other than the ones that were previously certified, obviously, which then you're running into the issue. So. Any other questions? Okay. First,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Thank you so much.
Well done.
I appreciate you guys having me. Thank you very much for your time.
And Sky, thank you.
We appreciate your commitment.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
What's that?
Hi, love you. Bye tomorrow. Yes. Thank you. No, when he walked over the.
No, I- okay. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, very nice. Actually, send me that in a minute.
Yeah, no, that is nice. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think when we do the budget with the Board of Finance, we can bring Sky. Just like
Walk around and push everything.
cuddle with people.
Yep.
With everybody.
I just find out. Are you gonna take a
Good.
break or are you gonna go right there?
Oh, I was gonna go right to the bylaws.
Let's do it.
Next item on the agenda is mine. As the commissioners know, I've been having discussions with John Burcham at the firm of Burcham and Moses. It's not named for him, it was named for his father. But John is a very impressive lawyer. On October 7th, he wrote me an email, which I shared with the other commissioners. His email reads, "Dear Chairperson Wilcox, in furtherance of our conversations, attached, please find the revised Police Commission bylaws for public comment and procedure, Police Commission correspondence, and responsibilities of commissioners. As discussed, these versions are consistent with law and policy." Have a wonderful weekend. With that validation, I would like to tender for consideration or action at our next meeting, the series of bylaws that accompanied Mr. Burcham's email to me. First, the public comment conduct. I might as well do all of these at once. Police Commission correspondence. And responsibilities of commissioners.
Oh, it's usually sweet. Okay, thank you.
Just so the record is clear, I'd like to read each one in for the people who are not.
Do you have a red line version? That would show like a red line version that would show like the changes or the old one versus the new one there?
No, this is just what Mr. Burcham gave you. First,
Most likely rewritten.
it is, they're all substantially rewritten. For the public comment, the only change is in paragraph 4, which I will read. The commission encourages speakers not to make offensive statements or to engage in personal attacks against individuals. To the extent speakers wish to complain about a police department employee in public comment, the commission requests that speakers refrain from identifying individual employees by name, rank, badge number, or any other specific reference that tends to identify the employee. For responsibilities of commissioners, Attorney Burcham gave us the following.
So is paragraph number,
This is the bylaw responsibilities of commissioners. Commissioners should strive to keep themselves informed as to all matters within their purview pursuant to state law and the town charter. Commissioners may be called to act in a quasi-judicial capacity, but may not serve in such a capacity if she or he demonstrates either actual bias against the officer in question or prejudgment of the issue in question. Commissioners are advised to remember that there are usually 2 or more sides to any issue, and that they should keep an open mind as to any issue until they have heard from all interested parties in any proceeding.
So that would be a new bylaw, right?
Is that one replacing
That's re-
investigation of
that's
personnel related?
Replacing
That's the
investigation.
very end of the,
So from a procedural standpoint, my only suggestion is, I think to be transparent to the public, I think we should somehow, some way present these in a manner that would explain this is the edit to this one, or this is replacing this one. I just,
What I can do readily
Yeah.
is post online the former version and the version that Attorney Burcham has said is consistent with law and policy.
it doesn't get too confusing to do that. But I was questioning that too, because I believed that it was replacing investigation of the personnel related matters.
Yes,
But I wasn't sure because the title on it is so totally different.
the title is different, and when I proposed it originally, I explained that that was the intent. And I can say that again, that it is the intent, that this would replace the current bylaw that deals with investigations
And personal related matters.
by commissioners.
But commissioners have other responsibilities as well. That's why.
You mean from a title perspective, Carl? That title is very general.
The title just doesn't match what it's set out to do. That's all. It doesn't. It's not clear.
Okay.
And it might not be clear to others. That's all.
I understand. I think it was originally captioned responsibility of
inquiries.
commissioners as to inquiries.
That, I think, right. I think that would be anyway, a little more explaining.
What happened to the as to inquiries?
I'm sorry,
What happened to the as to inquiries part?
what happened to
Responsibilities of commissioners as to inquiries.
it was,
It just could have been like
I think it was
that. It could have been
withdrawn because of the advice of counsel at the time.
Okay.
may I ask a question?
Sure.
So in the investigation of personal related matters, which I think you just said gets removed and this is the replacement for it. In that paragraph, it says,
Are you talking
commissioners,
about the old one?
the current. Commissioners shall not conduct individual investigations into personnel related complaints. When concerns are brought to a commissioner's attention regarding department employees, the commission should direct such concerns to the chief of police. And I don't see any language that would be representative of that philosophy in the replacement.
Because there is a fourth bylaw that Mr. Burcham is still addressing, dealing with complaints to commissioners.
Okay.
And it's squarely addressed there.
But if this would be approved prior to that other work in progress, there would be nothing dealing with that issue, right, in the bylaws.
Well, there'd be what's there is right now.
No, because it's a replacement.
Because it's replacing.
So that's my question. So in the current bylaws, there's a thing that says investigation of personnel related matters. What I'm understanding is this bylaw responsibilities of commissioners replaces in its entirety
That's correct.
investigation of personal related matters. And so the concern I'm raising is I believe that there's some very important language in the current bylaw that if this were to pass in a month or 2 months, depending on the procedures you choose to use, there would be no language that addresses what I consider to be, and I'm sure my personnel would also consider to be important language. So is there a way to,
I can ask Mr. Burcham to expedite his review.
yeah, I'm just trying to figure, you understand what I'm trying to say?
I understand, yeah.
There's a gap. And so I think that the public should see. I mean, what I would do is I would have this on one page, investigation of personnel related matters, all redlined, and then this new one in a different color, maybe green, underneath it to represent that's being deleted and this is the replacement. I think it's hard to say, here are the current bylaws and here's this, and try to figure out that that's replacing it. I'm just trying to be as,
I think I can figure out a way that will be transparent.
okay.
So, but in
Without
the,
having to resort to multi-colors.
Well, I mean, that's what you normally do when you're revising
That's the standard.
something, you know, it's kind of a, I didn't come up with it, Bill Gates did.
And maybe if I can make use of, Jen, I can do that too. I just can't do it on my iPad.
No, I'm not asking you to. I'm just saying that I think when the public sees a change to
I
bylaws,
understand your
it
point.
should be transparent, that's all. And I don't want to have a gap.
I understand your point.
So in the police commission correspondence, which I don't think we've read yet, it does say, and this may not fulfill what you're asking, but in the second paragraph, if the contents of the correspondence relates to police personnel or suggests the existence of threat for public safety, personnel, or property of the department, the chief of police shall also be notified of the correspondence.
Mhm.
Is that
Yeah.
sort of? cover that?
It's sort of, but I think it's narrowed to correspondence, you know what I mean? This other language that I think is good language, that's in the current bylaws, really just highlights personnel investigations and who handles them. And obviously this language follows state statute and state regulation. So I just don't, I think it's important to myself and department members that that language exists
You
somewhere.
have been heard.
I might also suggest to Carl's point that the title of this be added, responsible commissioners regarding personnel, something like that.
Or as to inquire.
Well,
Exactly, suggest.
And use personnel instead of inquiries.
Well, actually, this is not limited to personnel. That's why the first sentence reads, commissioners should strive to keep themselves informed as to all matters within their purview pursuant to state law and the town charter.
Right, it's just that I think, as
So-
Carl said, responsibilities commissioner, there's a lot more than just that, so.
So maybe for a procedural standpoint, maybe why you changed the agenda, right? Is that you're not actually moving this to a vote next meeting. Maybe this is kind of like the first read for commissioners to come back, collaborate at the next meeting, and then move that to the following meeting for adoption. I mean, you're talking about a month, but maybe that gives everyone more time to collaborate.
This is certainly a first read. That is what is intended by the agenda, and what is intended by me in presenting these and putting them all forward and inviting not just commissioner comment, but town comment, including comment from the department, the chief.
So these would not be voted for adoption next month. They would be
They might
voted
be.
for adoption
There
the
could be.
following month.
It would, I think the way the bylaws currently work for amendments is they are presented at meeting one for action at meeting two. This would be meeting one where they're simply being presented and discussed, but no action taken. The action would be at meeting two. I think that's the way the bylaws currently work.
So it said over here, it says amendments to the bylaws must be proposed in writing and referred to the next regular meeting of the commission. A 2/3 vote of the commission in favor of the proposed amendment shall be necessary for its adoption. So in my mind, there would be an action item tonight to formally refer it to the next meeting for a vote. And what I'm suggesting is, this being a first read, the next meeting would be continuation of discussion and finalization of discussion to then move it to the following meeting for adoption. That way it gives a 30-day or whatever, how many days for comment, whatever, and then you finalize whatever you're doing next meeting, and then it gets voted on at the following.
Yes, especially if there's another piece coming that we haven't seen and how all the parts go together.
Yeah, but these are standalone, I believe. These are intended to be standalone, even if there is no ultimate agreement on the citizen complaints bylaw.
We know the fourth one's gonna be a problem. Like,
Beg your pardon?
the fourth one's gonna take longer. I don't think it was ever meant that we were gonna do all four at once. At least that's my understanding.
Let me just read the last one, police commission correspondence, so that that is also presented tonight. Correspondence addressed to one or more commissioners or to, quote, the commission, close quote, or, quote, commissioners, close quote, may be initially addressed to them at town hall, at the Department of Police Services Building, or to one or more individual commissioners at their email or post office address. If addressed to them at the Police Services Building, the department shall promptly notify the addressee, (S), that mail awaits them and may be picked up at the dispatch window. Mail addressed to, quote, commissioners, close quote, or, quote, the commission, close quote, shall be treated as though it were addressed to each of the commissioners. No matter how received, the recipient shall cause a copy to be circulated to the full commission. If the contents of the correspondence relates to police personnel or suggests the existence of a threat to public safety, personnel, or property of the department, the chief of police shall also be notified of the correspondence.
Is the intent of that to replace the entire current police commission correspondence bylaw, or is this an addition, or just replacing some paragraphs like
It's
the previous,
replacing the entirety.
the entirety?
The current police commission correspondence bylaw deals only with correspondence that is addressed to the police department, that comes into the police department. This is trying to deal with all correspondence, no matter how it's addressed. So, if there is no further discussion, I suggest that we move on to the next agenda item. And
Yes, you go first.
So, you know, after hearing this discussion, I think, because we're still waiting on the fourth one, I think it would be beneficial if we shared the fourth one as a group, because it's still a work in progress. And right now it's just going back and forth, between the lawyers and you, right?
I am waiting on Mr. Burchin to send me the next draft that he thinks is compliant with law and policy.
So maybe, once you get it, just share with the rest of the commission, then they'll get their thoughts and their opinions.
Just the way when I got these, I shared them with
Right.
all the other commissioners right away, but I don't consider that presenting them as our bylaws require. I think tonight is presenting them,
Right.
but I will certainly share it as soon as I get it.
Yeah.
Something to maybe think about or to ask counsel, under the police commission correspondence bylaw that you just read, I wonder if it'd be helpful to put anything in there about records retention. That when a correspondence is received, that you'll adhere to the state library record retention schedule that, you know, we all have to adhere to. But I wonder if it's important to put that in your bylaws. And then the only other thing I would ask you to consider, and obviously I'll have to do the old one, the 10 paragraphs versus the 2 paragraphs. Instead of saying threat to public safety, maybe concern public safety. So that would be, you guys get an email that there's a lot of speeders on Main Street. I guess we could call that a threat to public safety, but that might not rise to everyone's threat level. I just rather know about that sooner than later so we can address it and not wait till, 30 days. Imagine you're a citizen reaching out to the police commission with they don't know what's operational and what's not, right? There's not a class on that. So maybe just concerning public safety, and that way I would know I'd be receiving that correspondence so the department can take proper action on it in a timely manner.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. That actually came up recently.
Right, at the last meeting,
Yeah.
at the speeding on fair roads, right?
The other thought I have is, before we do anything with this, I'd like to see a written opinion from the lawyers from Kerma. It would be inappropriate for us to proceed without that.
So you mean from the attorney that originally said
Yes,
revoke the ones that you just made, get his opinion?
Are they the insurance attorneys?
Yes, they're the insurance for the town.
And
But
free it.
I would actually suggest instead to run that by Carl Fortuna to see if he is comfortable with this with Burcham. Because that was part of the problem before, is that he had a question about the other ones since we were in we voted in disagreement with Attorney Cronin. So that's why it ended up at Kerma. Here, we're going along with what the attorney was recommending.
I
Well-
guess I kind of assumed that Carl was reviewed, but that was just my assumption.
And so if I hear you, you're just saying, because the insurance company made one ruling, let them just take a lead.
please protect all of us, protect the town.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm just spread. Carl would have already done that, you know what I mean?
I mean, we're 4 law firms in.
Right,
So.
I'm sure Carl would have that, I don't know.
Well, no, because the only reason Carl got involved last time was because Carol asked if we would be indemnified, which I don't know if that even ever got answered.
The answer was no.
That never
You go
solved it,
against
right?
counsel. Yeah, that's the end. I didn't see the writing, but I know the answer is no. Given to her.
By the way, I should mention that Commissioner Manning is not here tonight because of the death yesterday of a dear friend of hers. From COVID, as a matter of fact. It is COVID is 2 days. Are there any other comments before we move on?
Can I just ask a clarifying question? Sometimes we move on and I'm not sure everyone's on the same page. So this was first read, discussion and finalization, next meeting, vote at the following meeting.
I'd have to check the bylaws, Chief. My recollection is that it's a 2-step, not a 3-step process.
So it could be a 2-step process if we had in my opinion, if we had an action item to move this to the agenda, but it sounds like there's still collaboration happening on the draft bylaw
There is
that was
still,
presented tonight for the first time.
there is still collaboration happening. Could I see the bylaws? Sure.
I think that what the chief is saying is that Joe and Carl and everybody, we have opinions on what was written. So these opinions need to be addressed, and then we need to read how it's addressed
Right, publicly.
and then we vote on it next time, because that would be the first read of the, new draft.
Well, and the other concern would be is if one of these is replacing a section, of the bylaws that, I think the term the chief used was that gap piece too. That would be another concern with the timing of things.
So remember on the draft agenda, I had discussion and possible action, and you changed it to presentation and discussion. I think presentation and discussion means exactly what you just did, which is probably your intent. But I don't think that the agenda calls for it to be moved for a vote.
Okay, let me read what the bylaws currently say about amendments. Amendments to the bylaws must be proposed in writing and referred to the next regular meeting of the commission. I have proposed them in writing and I am,
But there's
Right,
something
but
to
we want them
change, so,
changed.
of course, they're subject to change.
but we won't have time to review the changes or,
Right.
and then vote on it.
So you can't make the change at the next meeting and then vote on the changes. You have to
Okay,
make the change and then refer it to the next. You need one more. Let's let Larry do it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Oh, yeah.
Rubber tip.
You got- come on. Very.
I'm not saying that voting next time would not comply with our procedural bylaws. That's not my point. My point is that there's some bigger pieces to this whole thing that won't be ready to be voted on next month. That's what I'm saying.
Depends on what they are, I guess.
Well, if the changes don't happen, there's no need to vote on them, because there's changes that need to happen, or.
Oh, there may be some modest changes. For example, changing the title. To
Well, so
make it-
those changes are.
But then you would have to do that officially and move that bylaw with the changes
And
to the
show
next meeting for
everybody.
action. You can't show up at the next meeting and say,
I would-
I made the following changes, let's vote.
I would consult with my parliamentarian on that.
Yeah, Chubb, I personally wouldn't vote. If not everybody here had a chance to look over the amended bylaws that come, I wouldn't want to vote. It's
I
not fair.
understand.
I mean,
Like, didn't everybody receive these or no?
I did not get, this is the first time I've seen
The
it, so I don't know what email.
From the town email?
I went to the town email, I did not get these, so I don't know how.
Again, your work should be done.
In meetings.
Right, and so if you're collaborating, which is nice to see, by the way, I like to say that, it's nice to see a discussion. But it sounds like there needs to be changes made. It could be a title, it could be what I suggested about not a
And it
threat
may-
or whatever.
Chief, it may be that my parliamentarian, who is not here tonight, is going to say,
Who is your parliamentarian?
Carol.
Carol,
I didn't know you made an appointment of a parliamentarian.
I didn't make an appointment of a parliamentarian. But I consult her, I treat her as that. I asked her to familiarize herself and advise me on that. I didn't. I need to have an official parliamentarian for the commission.
I don't think.
But as chair, I think a parliamentarian is an aide. Now, without judging anybody's comments, are there further comments from any commissioner on these proposed amendments?
I think it's really important to just recognize that, like, we're all on the commission, and these bylaws, yes, you've worked really hard on them, but the point isn't for you to get them passed, for you to cross the finish line. The point is for all of us to really have conversation on it and to work on it together and get them passed.
I think, may I?
Yes.
Second. I'm thinking that I would be more comfortable if the changes were made, brought back next time. We look at them and then the following meeting, we vote on them. I think, I know that there is an effort that we want to get this done. But I think we have to really just take it slow and get it done the right way. So that everybody is comfortable with it. I personally would be comfortable making the changes and going forward to a vote next time. But what I'm hearing is that's not, and I know from, my own past experiences that typically whenever there are changes like this, it does come another step in between.
I'm happy to proceed that way.
I'm not trying to slow things down, but I would be more comfortable if I had some time to take the current bylaws and put these side by side and see where the changes are.
I will do that for you.
Well, that would be
And
great.
circulate it and Carl, I use your old Saybrook CT.gov email.
I check it every day,
Check-
so
check
I don't
it
know
out.
why I didn't
Carl,
receive
I
it.
know I sent you an email too and you didn't get it. So I don't know if there's something going on with how it's set up.
Did you sent it to the CT one?
I sent it to the government one.
Yeah,
And
see, I
identified
don't know. I mean,
to your
the
personal-
last email I have in there is from.
So
Was
if I-
the chief
if I
sent
could
me
play-
the video.
If I can play techie for a second, it's a new thing in email that you have to multi-factor authenticate, which means you have to prove you're you. And
Yeah.
periodically it expires on that account. I don't know if it's every 30 days or whatever it is.
It depends on what I
No,
log
but
in.
what I'm saying, you have to re-up it, because I've realized, hey, I haven't gotten an email I probably should have gotten, and I've double checked it, it says you have to re-authenticate, so it may be that,
So wouldn't it alert me though?
depending on what.
When I try to
avenue-
log in.
It should alert you, and it might be something as bizarre as having focused inbox turned on. And it deciding it
There's
doesn't
that.
want to be, there's things.
I'll check it.
Yeah, we should,
I'll
we
check
should,
into it.
I
um,
think Larry-
we.
I have
we
all
should-
Apple
we should-
products. I don't.
Yeah, we should sit down sometime and take a look at it.
All right.
Yeah, I
And see
think
what's
that's
going on.
really a good idea.
I mean, I check it every night on my,
Because I was wondering, what is he ignoring me?
no, no.
I would
Please
just
reach
ask
out.
commissioners if we're sharing stuff to make sure we're using that address as opposed to something recently that I think our personal addresses. It was an
Well,
innocent
yeah,
mistake,
exactly.
just as a gentle reminder.
I think
No,
what's
no.
happening is if you look at that email, it shows Jessica's response and you have to go down to where the initial email came in that thread. I ran into the same.
I mean, I
thing,
dropped
figured
it.
out.
It just,
Yeah, I will.
and I look at the dates and it's like, that was so long ago. I don't understand why it's not repopulating. I will spend some more time on that because I don't want to be behind. It doesn't like when I log in every.
Discussion by commissioners. Let's move on to discussion concerning meeting start time for the 2023 calendar year. We don't have to act on this, but I wanted to put out a suggestion that Commissioner Kaye made, which was that we start our meetings for the next year at 6:30 instead of at 7. No action, but if asking people to think about that.
You want comments or just the people who think about it?
Comments are welcome.
Comments.
I would be opposed. I'm not retired. I have young kids. It's been 7 o'clock. It's kind of what the public expects. And for personally, 7 o'clock works much better than 6:30. Since you asked.
So I'm not retired either. I have young kids, it's 30, it just works better. You get home sooner. Yeah. Anyway, yeah.
So 5 o'clock in quarterly.
I was thinking great.
So
I went right here from work. I still had 2 crews out on the road I got here at 7, I don't get dinner, so.
Right, right. Thank you.
Okay. Item 11, discussion concerning Chief Sparrow's goals for himself for the 2023 calendar year. Jill, this is yours.
This is mine. I had asked the chairman to have a conversation with the chief about the goals for this year. Possibly because I'm on the Board of Ed timeline still, thinking that goals would be presented in September. And we hadn't seen them. So with that, it appeared on the agenda. And I began to realize that goals would have been presented within the budget this January, which didn't have a presentation. So you will be presenting goals for January, I'm imagining.
The chairman lets me. Last year, I was not allowed to present the budget, and that's where you would have heard my goals.
And I think the goals are imperative.
I agree.
Particularly in light of the fact that we're going to begin to talk about an evaluation process with, well, evaluation tool and instrument and process with the subcommittee that's going to be meeting very soon. So those are integral to what we're going to do within that process. So they should also be, I'm imagining that you are working on them, of course, at this point now, and it would be our pleasure, I suppose, if they were SMART goals, that whole element of being measurable and specific, et cetera, et cetera.
So I can tell you that obviously setting executive goals is nothing new. That in 2009, when I was sworn in as police chief, I had goals for that year and every year since. The previous commission had me report on my goals biannually, sometimes quarterly, depending on how advanced they were. All of the goals that we do in the department, including shift goals, set by the sergeants and their staffs, are SMART goals. So that's nothing new. The goals that I've created for the past couple of years have been in concert with the 6 pillars of law enforcement. And so they'll continue to be, because I think that's important to have a tie into a national policing philosophy. And what I usually do starting in the November meeting is ask commissioners if they have any thoughts or ideas to reach out to me individually and personally to share them with me for me to consider as I finalize my goals for this presentation in January.
And when do you do that outreach?
November usually, but I think it was just done.
About 8 seconds ago.
Right, so no sense in waiting to November. So if anyone has any input, offer to all commissioners, feel free to reach out to me individually, and we can have those conversations, and then I will present my goals, again, if I'm allowed to present in January, to the commission.
Could we see if you have the goals that you didn't get to present?
Yeah, so what normally happens in my budget presentation is I talk about last year's goals, whether they were achieved or not. And if they were achieved, how we demonstrated success. If they were not achieved, perhaps the reasons why. And then I'll outline new goals. Some goals carry over from year to year. If there was a goal that during the height of COVID, there were some goals that couldn't be achieved just because they couldn't be achieved because of a worldwide pandemic. Those were carried over to the next year to be important. But, you know, the goals for this year surround the fleet, rolling over the fleet program and dealing with supply chain shortages and the increased costs, and to make sure that that program came in on budget. And as we discussed earlier, it looks like we'll be satisfying that goal in November. The uniform transformation of the department obviously had a large budgetary impact and a lot of moving pieces. That was one of the goals. So, you know, we'll review those things, the executive tools that were designed in Next Gen, and disseminating them publicly and to our staff transparently. That was another executive goal. So there's a lot of goals that have been achieved. And of course, those aren't the only accomplishments during the year. So as things come up, they might become mini goals, but they weren't part of my, year-long executive planned out goals.
Any other questions? Next item on the agenda, annual report from the chairman. I have drafted an annual report that I intended to give tonight, but after watching the funeral for the fallen police officers in Bristol on Friday, it seemed to me that here in Old Saybrook, we might all benefit from a little space and the perspective that brings for any annual report by the police commission. Therefore, I would welcome a motion to table this agenda item until our November meeting with one caveat. I think the conclusion of my draft annual report remains timely, and I would like to read just that last sentence into the record tonight. It is important that you know, and the you here is the town of Old Saybrook. It is important that you know this. My confidence has only grown that Chief Sparrow works hard every day and all day to make our department be as effective as it can be in serving our community and as safe as it can be for the women and men who serve in our department. With that, I invite a motion to table this item.
So
Make a
moved.
motion, I mean, there's all the items on this meeting.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Next item is correspondence. Does any commissioner have any correspondence to report?
No, I have nothing.
Does the department have any correspondence to report? Closing comments from the public? Anyone raising a hand virtually?
No hands are raised.
Comments from the chief of police?
Thank you. Thank you for a good meeting tonight. I liked the collaboration I started seeing. I just want to renew my advice to the commission on having a retreat that focuses on getting the commission to work together better, to collaborate better, and to establish your own goals. It would be great that perhaps as I deliver the budget address in January, that the commission is outlining their goals that are created together and not separately, and then separately and brought together, that you folks sit around a table. I'll buy the bread, you break it, you eat it, and you talk. I firmly believe that everyone is on the commission to do something good on behalf of the town of Old Saybrook. It just doesn't seem to happen at every meeting. And I think it can, but I think we have to work to get there. And I want you to know, I want the public to know, I want the men and women I proudly lead to know that I am committed to getting this commission to gel and work. We have 3 more years with each other. We have to do better. And I want to do better. And I want to help you do better. I am not a member of the commission. I don't try to be a member of the police commission. But I have some knowledge and experience in this area. And I know we can do some great things for the department and for the town and together. And that's my comment.
Chief, so far as the retreat goes, as you know, I've spoken with the FOIA people, and it's fine as long as we don't make any decisions. So we can put that in motion, recognizing that it's not going to result in decisions.
Not decisions, but your later posted public meeting, you can make some decisions.
Yes.
You can say, we worked really hard in our retreat, and now let's outline our goals for the next year,
Agreed.
because it's important.
I just wanted to make sure that there wasn't a misconnect because
Oh,
of
no, there's not.
And it should be volunteer, like not everybody should have to go to the retreat if they don't want
They
to.
want to, but you would hope that everyone would want to become a better public servant.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Yes, true. Ultimately.
Any comments from commissioners? Ms. Sullivan?
Yeah, Chief, if we could for next month, I'd love to be able to respond to questions from the community about legal expenses incurred by this group over the last year, regardless of where the money comes from. I know it's a legal fund for us, but if that's not too heavy a lift, to put just together a summary for next month's packet, that'd be possible.
Not just our budget, like the whole,
Right, regardless of the funding source, right?
I asked Leanne. I mean, I'll email
Okay.
Leanne.
Great. And then I guess I'd like to comment on the chairman's presentation, Board of Finance. Opening with what several people have described disparaging comments about the chief was a little troublesome for me. And then from a commissioner standpoint, when the idea floated of $70,000 for consultant, and I asked, I believe at least twice, the purpose of those funds, and you could not provide an answer, but at a Board of Finance meeting, you had a list. And that list was not a commission list because we did not discuss that. So I'm not sure if that list was your own personal list or there was another commission offline meeting that took place. But irregardless, I felt it was inappropriate for you to present a list of the reasons that we wanted additional funding and created our own budget when that's not something that was discussed or decided upon by the commission.
I appreciate your sense of frustration there. Ms. Kayaks?
Well, yeah, so I wanted to sort of echo the chief. Actually, he just sort of like said exactly what's been on my mind. I think we should come up with goals for ourselves, as a commission in this room, whether it's at the retreat or before the retreat. They should play off of the chief's goals in a sense, or at the very least, show a way that how are we going to help him help us help the community and so forth and back and forth and all which ways of saying it. I do think it's important to talk about it, and I don't know if ideas want to start generating in individuals' heads, and maybe next time we can put it on the agenda and just get some ideas going. I do think it's important to get that done. And Joe, we were all semi-blindsided by what Chuck said at the Board of Finance meeting, just so you know.
Thank you.
Ms. Nora Francesco?
I just want to change I'm not going to play off of what Joe said. I just want to say thank you for every day of work that you guys do out there in the community, putting your lives on the line as we have so sadly seen. It's very well appreciated, and I think it really just brings it home what can happen. We take it for granted a lot of times, but I just wanted to say thank you to everybody from the chief on down.
And so, Commissioner, that is very much appreciated, and I know we very much appreciate it throughout the building as our staff watches these meetings routinely, either live or after they're put on YouTube. Sadly and probably rightfully so, conversations around Thanksgiving tables and Christmas tables with families of police officers are going to talk about this tragedy, and there's probably going to be conversations about, is this the right profession for our family anymore? And so at a time where recruitment and retention is an issue nationwide, and our police officers are wrongfully under attack and ambushed and murdered, a husband or a wife looking at their loved one who's a professional law enforcement officer saying, is this worth it? Is a conversation that's happening. And so I appreciate that. Showing appreciation to police officers does not mean agreeing with 100% of the work that we do, but being an ambassador on both sides of the aisle is very, very important to us. So I don't want to belabor it, but thank you for saying that.
Mr. Van Dossel?
I was a little taken aback at the Board of Finance meeting presentation, only for the staffing or the retention study, and what we'd be needing a consultant or money to look into that, because I was very impressed with the presentation that was put on. And it wasn't put on just by the chief. It was researched by his department, not just him. And I saw on CBS News before I left tonight, it's a national problem. They made a comment tonight that Miami was down, the city of Miami was down 60 officers, but the city of Minneapolis was down 300 officers. So it's a tough profession and there's not a lot of people to fill the spots.
Sadly true. Ms. Shippey?
Yeah, I just have a couple comments. The retreat thing, Jessica has had this discussion and seems to think that I'm not on board with that. I think I've said repeatedly, if we have something written that we can participate in this, the 7 of us as commissioners, I'm fine with that. I thought this was happening in September. And here we are in October. And then Joe, as far as the legal bills go, perhaps the chief can sway Leanne, but what's gonna happen is I've already got these bills for the last 2 years and you get every single bill for the town and nothing, you have to go through and itemize and break down because there's multiple billings from the same attorney. It's not like, here's all the bills for the police commission. Like everything is all put together from all the different attorneys, and there's like 5 or 6 different attorneys. I will forward you every single email that I got. It's just, it takes a lot of time to go through there and take out. And I was pleasantly surprised to find that I don't think we spent what was spent last year. Yeah. There's a lot to those bills. It's not that cut and dry. And Carl said, we're not going to create a document for you. Here's the stuff.
Maybe you should see the bills, just so you get a general idea.
Well, please don't send them to me, send them to everybody. And the chairman did suggest I reach out to you, but that will be inappropriate for us to have a one-on-one. So I'd be happy to see them,
all
just send it to everybody.
It's all information that I've gained through Freedom of Information. It's not top secret. I'll send it to everybody.
Yeah, thank
If you can't sleep at night, it'll be good. You can read that. I'll send it to everybody.
Thank you.
Then perhaps you can put a report together for next meeting.
Just give a general idea.
And I've said my piece for tonight, so. I request a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.